So I was telling you yesterday that Graham had his moments of he didn't really know what questions to ask, and so he wanted to make sure and give you a life lesson. But he did come up with some questions, and so did some of the other kids. So we get to start nice and easy for you. So Graham has a few questions. What is your favorite food?
Hamburgers.
Well, good thing we're having some today then. Did that change over time? Did you have something different when you were a kid?
Well, be honest with you, anything my mother cooked, she cooked it. If she thought it was too tough, she overcooked. She just kept cooking it. So hamburgers, she couldn't screw up too badly. So I kind of went that way. I hate peanut butter and jelly.
That's good. What did you like to play or do when you were a kid?
Baseball. That's all I ever did. Even when I was like Graham's age, there'd be a kid down the street in Iowa out there, and he and I'd play catch all day. And when he wasn't there, I had a tennis ball. I used to throw it against the side of the house and catch it, dive for it, and stuff like that. I did it all day long. Used to drive my mom nuts when she was home from work. You quit that. You want back up here?
She wants to be.
I say he won't let me up. So.
What was the most popular games like when you were a kid? What was all the other kids doing?
I don't know. Well, you're in Iowa. There's only about 3 or 4 that weren't farm kids
Right.
in town. And I had found one, Dave Armstrong, that would play catch with me all day. So that was pretty much it. Or foot racing. I was more than adequate with that, so I, you know.
Which leads perfectly to Graham's next question is, what was your favorite sports? What did you like to play?
Well, I need to say baseball. And although I played football and did well in that, my next favorite was probably basketball. Because after I got out of high school, I played in the men's league in Longmont. I played in 3 teams, and one night I played 3 games. I never had a problem with it. I just played, you know.
So you tell this story a little bit about what happened with baseball and kind of the progression of.
Well, I think when I was probably 7 or 8, Dad played a fast pitch softball league that ended up winning the state championship and stuff. And they had me as their bat boy. And the team itself was funded well, where they all had leather jacket type jackets to keep warm with and stuff. So they had one for me, and everybody's name was on their jacket. And of course, Dad's name was always Rick, so I was little Ricky Jr. God, I hated that. I do now. At the time, that was fun. And I can remember we were having some game, and I think it was in Longmont, at Roosevelt, and somebody got a base hit. And I rush out and pick up the bat. I was picking the bat up as the guy was sliding home. I was right in the middle of the mess. Didn't hurt me, scared me to death, but then they had to give me another education on bat boys. You stay out of it until the umpires, you know, tells you can come out and get it. I'm just going to get it. Well, I got it. But that was a fun time because we always went to A&W afterwards, and everybody would get, all the players in the car would get big root beers, and they had real small little ones, about a shot glass size, the little handle, and they'd always get one of those for me. I thought, oh, that's great. This is great. Something to look forward to, you know.
It was that the A&W on Main Street?
On Main Street,
Yeah.
right there between 9th and 10th,
Yep.
on the east side. It was owned by Rick Willie, and he was one of the sponsors also. So, team would go in there, 2 or 3 cars worth of people. Of course, everybody was from the farms around Niwot. They were all in that general vicinity, and so everybody would go in several cars, but we'd pull in there, and as soon as we'd pull in, boy, they were out there waiting on us, just quicker than heck, I never did. I can't remember anybody ever paying for anything. He might have been free root beers after the game or something, I don't know. But it was fun for me. I was the only bat boy. I kept thinking, boy, some games, you play in those tournaments. We went to Canyon City one time and played. They played in a tournament. We played 5 games in one day. They got in the loser's bracket, the first bracket, and then they had to go all the way back to the loser's bracket to play for the championship. And I was getting tired running back and forth. Of course, I wasn't even aware that baseball players were probably tired more than I was, but I'm thinking, boy, we need another guy out here. The bats are so big and heavy.
Yeah.
They weren't aluminum, they were wood. But
So you played Little League, played Summer Leagues?
I never played baseball. I played softball because I had to be out of the park and home. So I played in 3 different leagues during the day, and they were softball. And I think we went to state championships, 5 times when I was playing. And we did well. Then when I started playing baseball, then I got away from softball. And so I started coaching softball. And Walmart had a team that was coached by, I can't remember who it was. And that was the A team. And there was a bunch of real good ball players that they weren't invited to play. And it was more like, who do you know, not how good are you, on the first team. So I took the rest of the guys, and we ended up beating them for the state championship. Sure. What the heck?
How old were you when you were coaching that?
Oh, geez, something like 12 or 13. I was coaching kids the same age. But I was playing baseball. I wasn't gonna go back to softball. That screwed me up. So, and I pitched softball also. So, which helped me pitching baseball because I had an idea what batters were hoping you'd pitch and which they were hoping you didn't pitch in softball. So, I kind of applied that to baseball. Except the first couple of years in baseball in high school, freshman and sophomore year, I didn't pitch. They used me in the outfield or the infield because I hit the ball well and I had a lot of wheels, speed. So, I was the latter part of my sophomore year, I pitched some games, and then when I was a junior and senior, I was the only one that ever did pitch. I mean, every game they'd always have them. You could only pitch so many innings in so many days, and they had the schedule set so I could throw a 9-inning game and still be eligible for the next game. So,
How did it work out when you went from Longmont High School to college, when you went to Mesa to play?
a lot of good ball players, a lot of very good ball players, and Barry Lurch, who ended up with Philadelphia, he was a pitcher, and they ended up putting him at shortstop because I think the scouts told, I can't remember the coach's name either, Bud. Anyhow, so he kind of opened up a position in the pitching staff for me. And I thought they were going to use me as a reliever, but they used me as a starter. And it was kind of interesting because I think the first game that I was starting, we were playing against BYU in Provo, Utah. And I hear this guy in the grandstand cheering for me. I'm going, who is this? I don't even know who would be in Utah. Well, it ended up being my natural father, John Coffey. He'd heard from, I'm sure, Jan, that I was doing this, so. But it was fun. We went to the Junior College World Series, and we did fairly well. We got beat probably in the third or fourth round, but
And that was your only year you played for Mesa.
yeah,
You were scouted
yep,
and drafted.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep.
That year after your
I
freshman?
wasn't drafted.
Not drafted, but
There was no draft at
there
that
was
time.
no draft at that time.
Right.
But you were signed
Right.
with a contract for
Right, and that was the same time that I got my pre-induction physical call
for Vietnam.
to go to Vietnam, and my number was number 1 or 2, no more than that. When they call you, they pull out a birth date, and mine was like 1 or 2, and I went, oh geez. So I'm thinking, well, I'm going to stay in school and study like crazy, because if you get your grades get down, they'll pull you. You're gone. And I went down for my pre-induction physical and went through the whole thing, and I was still getting ready to go. This was in January, I believe. We're going to play another year, and I got home, and this Tom DeMark from Liberty, Missouri, I don't think I'll ever forget it, with Philadelphia Phillies, was sitting in the living room with my dad. And the whole way home, I was stewing about how am I going to tell Dad that I failed my physical, because Dad is gung-ho, get in there and do something, you know. And I can walk in the door, and I didn't recognize DeMark because I'd seen him at a few games, but I didn't know who he was. And he said, well, how'd it go? And I was getting ready to sit, and he says, you failed, didn't you? I went, yeah. It's like that, and they go, well, good. We have something to talk to you about. And that's, of course, at that time, when I signed, it was like worth nothing, but it was more than my mom and dad both made in the same time, a year. You know, so let's go for it, you know. And then I got banged around pretty good and got injured and had some surgery. Then they wanted me to come back.
Tommy John surgery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was from a pitch get thrown at me, not me pitching. They were using me in the outfield primarily. And when I first reported, we played against a team, it was probably AA ball from Pittsburgh. And I pitched the first game, and they moved me to a different field to play the outfield. Another game that was someplace else in Florida. So I went there and played the outfield. And I get back and find out I've been traded to the Pirates. I went, oh, okay. So I shuffle all my stuff. And good old boy from Niwot, Colorado, I don't know what's going on. You know, I really didn't. And they said, okay, well, the pitchers get out there and do your warm-up running, and the rest of you guys are going to take some hitting practice before you start limbering up too much. So I went over and started running, and they said, well, where are you going? I said, I'm going to go do the running with the pitchers. No, we got you as an outfielder. You get over here. I went, oh, okay. I didn't know. So all of a sudden I was no pitcher. When I got injured and I started my rehab and got out of that, I played with collegians for about, at the end of a year, because the first year I played with Erie, because they were part of the Rocky Mountain Baseball League also. And played with them and did well there, but I was also racing. And we played on Sundays, so about every other Sunday I'd go racing. And And the other Sunday, I'd stay in town and pitch. Had a good time. That was pretty much it after that.
That's good. Thank you. This is okay. So this is Hayden's question. What year were you born, and what was it like back then?
1946. And it's pretty much like it is now, but the houses were smaller and you played in the streets because there was no cars went through. In Iowa at the time, it was a dirt road down the main drag or 2nd Avenue. So when people would change their oil, the farmers, they would put it in, they would come in and spread it on the street, and everybody was so happy because it kept the dust down out of the houses. It was really weird. So when they first oiled, you couldn't go out and play in the street. You had to stay in the yard. Really upsetting. But Dad and probably 4 or 5 other people from the church went over and built a baseball field for us in a vacant lot, which is not, need to say, not a vacant lot anymore in downtown Iowa. And we'd get 5 or 6 guys out there, and we'd play 3 against 3, just play ball all day long, all summer anyhow. But then we moved to Longmont. And we lived on Johnston Road, which is now Lashley. And across the street was a cornfield. All east was all cornfields. We were the last street. And Mom and Dad would take all 3 of us kids to the theater. I don't know if it was the Trojan Theater or not. And give us all a quarter. And every Saturday and Sunday, they would drop us off. Well, at the time, you could go in on Saturday and see the movie because it was the same movie on Sunday. So I would make sure I went on Saturday, and then we'd get another quarter and I'd go to next door to Colorado Creamery, and for a dime, it was all the buttermilk you could drink. I'd sit there and drink buttermilk the whole day and give somebody like a dime, and one of the girls would get me a Red Hots or something. That's what I did on Sundays.
That's good. All right. Noah asks, "What is your favorite childhood memory?"
Probably just playing. We used to go. We stayed at the grandma's house every day because Mom and Dad both worked. So we would walk down to grandma's house in Iowa. It wasn't a very long walk, like 5 houses away from here, and we were there all day. And Aunt Lucille, which was Bev and Charlie's mother, she'd had a brain surgery. She had a growth in her brain, and they brought her home, and Uncle Chuck would bring her over in the mornings when he'd go to work. And Grandma would watch her all day. And she'd play cards with us and stuff. And Grandma used to get so upset with me because I would start goofing around with something and start Aunt Lucille laughing so hard. Grandma would get upset with me. "You're going to make her sick. What are you doing?" I was, having a good old time doing what I was doing. I don't know what I was doing, but but that's probably the best thing because those 3 kids used to go in the backyard, and Grandma had an old patio thing behind the garage. The garage was a single garage between Uncle Chuck and Grandma's house, and Charlotte always parked in it. So we'd sit out there and act like we were in a stagecoach. And we had some little plastic glasses, and Grandma would give us some root beer. We'd pour these little plastic glasses and act like they were champagne in the saloon. Grandma would come out and go, "What are you guys doing now?" Just playing. Stagecoach. But that was kill time, and we were busy all day, you know. Or I was playing ball. That's probably why Deb ended up being such a tomboy when she was really young, because I convinced her that we have to play catch. She's, no. Well, Jan doesn't want to. Well, I didn't ask Jan. Ask you, because you can catch. Man, I've been, the last couple of days, all I've been doing is blowing my nose. I can imagine they're going to feed me through my nose.
Right.
God.
Grandma West was a pretty important part of your life.
Absolutely. Yep. She pretty much raised all three of us. And Mom was difficult for all three of us to get along with. I mean, she was.
She was just hard on you guys.
Well, she didn't have time for us. And if you weren't doing what you had to have, what she had to have, get out of the way. When she was home on a Saturday and she'd be in there cleaning the house, she'd make us go outside. And the side of the house that faced to the east, she tells us to get our jean jackets on and go outside and play, and it'd be full of snow. So the snow wouldn't be on the east side of the house where the sun was hitting, so we'd sit out there. We sit out there for hours. It's because you can't come inside until I get the house clean. And I don't know, she finally let us come in, and I spilled something on the kitchen floor, and she made me get on my hands and knees with a rag and a sponge and clean the whole thing. I had to clean the whole thing. I just spilled it here. No, clean the whole thing. Next time you'll remember not to spill. Well, I remembered right away when you slapped me.
Can you describe Grandma West? I never got to meet her.
She was just a good woman. I don't know how. Okay, if you put in perspective, you know how nice Jan is.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jan got a lot of that from her. That's how she was. Concerned about everybody in town, who's doing what. Everybody in town called her Grandma West. Even the people older than her. She was Grandma West. And Dave Armstrong called her Grandma West all the time, and he was adopted by Walt and gosh darn, I can't believe Blanche Atkinson. They lived right across the street from us, and she was such a nice lady that when we would have dinner, he'd always say, "Well, isn't Grandma West coming?" You know, that type of thing, because everybody just liked to be around her. But she always made us take our naps in the afternoon. So I convinced her that I should be able to take my nap on the front porch because it was cooler. Well, that's because she wanted to take a nap. And when she was asleep, I went out the front door, which is a screen door, close it real quiet, and go out and play. And I'd be out there and play for about a half hour, then I'd come back in and lay down. And she'd come in, "Everybody, it's time to get up. You can't sleep all day." Okay. I don't think I took but about 2 or 3 naps because I was always out playing. I had things to do. She had Haystack Mountain is where the church had their sunshine or their Easter services. And geez, all the kids would go climb up on Haystack Mountain and then race down. And I don't know how many. Everybody from the Niwot area was there. And we were racing down, and I did a header and fell into a ditch. And my mom would buy from Montgomery Ward's a suit for you to wear. And you got it on Easter. And then you had to wear it all year long. Now, if you grew out of it, that's too bad. You wore it all year. So when you got your Easter suit and it was time to wear, it was usually about 2 sizes too big because you grow out of it. By the time there's time to get rid of it, it fit. But I fell, and I thought Mom was going to kill me out there because I got everything dirty and wet and everything else. She snapped me around a few times, and I started crying, and Dad had to go over. Dad used to get so upset with her, but he could just say to me, "Stop doing that stuff. All it does is make your mother and I argue." I go, "Okay." And Mom's name was Dora Maxine.
We just talked about that the other day.
But she didn't like to go by Dora because that was Dad's mother's name. She didn't like, and probably once a month we would all get in the car and drive to Louisville. And you went to 287, then you had to go through dirt roads to get into Louisville to go see Grandma and Grandpa. Well, Grandma and Grandpa were very strict. Of course, you would be too if you had 10, 11 kids, you know. And Grandpa would start reading the Bible. And all those kids, and there'd probably be 10 grandkids there, we had to all sit and listen to him. And if you didn't, oh boy, you had a problem. And Mom and Dad were going to Grand Junction one time, and I wanted to stay with Grandma West. And no, you kids are all going to go stay with Grandma and Grandpa Rickman. They're going to be gone for 2 days or 3 days. So we had little suitcases, packed our suitcases. They took us to Louisville and dropped us off. And I went outside to play doing something, and they told me I couldn't go out there and do that. It upset me so much that I went in, and he says, "What are you doing?" So I'm packing my suitcase and I'm going home. I was walking, man. I didn't care. I was going home. And so I heard about that a lot later after Mom and Dad picked us up.
This is a good question. This is from Brooklyn. How did you find your love of cars?
Well, when I was growing up in Niwot, Dad always had to fix his own cars because we really couldn't afford to have a mechanic do it. And he was pretty adept at it. And so I would help him. Not do anything, but I was more in the way than anything, but at least I was helping him. And when I was 12, I was playing ball with John Haley and those guys were all Jan's age. And I said something about, boy, I wish I had a car, because at the time we had a water cistern in Niwot. And I got to drive into Longmont and fill up the water tank and, excuse me. Hello. How are you?
I think I'm having an allergy attack today, but I'm fine otherwise.
That's because you're out playing in the yard too much yesterday. Yeah. I did get that obituary out of the paper. Yeah, I got it saved.
Thank you.
Okay.
I was thinking I gotta get gas in my car and go to the grocery store. So I thought, are you expecting company today?
Well, I'm over at Collins right now.
So you'll be there most of the day?
We're going to have barbecue a little bit later. you want me to call you when I'm home?
Yeah, I'm gonna run into town and get gas because Tim's gonna take my car to Johnson's.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll give you a jingle.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye. Deb Colson. Now, what was I saying?
So you pick back up that you
Oh,
go fill up the water.
yeah. So I was driving all the time. It wasn't like it was a foreign thing for me. And John and Jim Haley said, you should talk to us, talk to my dad because we've got a car that runs, but he said we got to get rid of it. And I said, what is it? She said, a 32 Chevy. I said, well, how much do you want? Well, something, and I said, I can't afford that because all I was doing at the time was coaching little league softball at the park, and I was getting like $8 a week, and that was 5 days a week too. And I thought, well, let's see. I started checking how much money I had, and I said, well, I don't have very much money. I only have $25. And well, we got to have 75 for it at least. We got that much in tires on it. So I was telling Jan. Jan says, well, I'll loan you the $50. Sign me up. So we go into the long lot, and they lived on Collier Street. And they got it in the garage and started it up. Okay, fine. Gave me the title for it. And Jan and I are going to drive it home. Jan wasn't really old enough to drive anyhow, but I always, when she would swipe mom and dad's car, so all the girlfriends could go drag Maine, Jan always got the car, and Aunt Margie, who lived right next door, would give Jan $1 for gas. And I always got to go because I was the only one who knew how to shift. Do you believe that? We had like 4 girls and me. I'm in the front seat shifting. Yeah. So I pretty much knew what I was doing with it. And so I took it home and I told Dad I bought this car. And he said, I'll tell you what, you tear that engine apart, rebuild it by yourself, and you get it running. And I mean tear it apart. Rebuild it and get it all running. You can drive it anywhere you want to. Well, I started, my freshman year in high school was on my birthday when I was 13. And shortly after that, I started driving to school from Niwot to Longmont High in my 32 Chevy. No plates, no insurance, and scrounging for gasoline money. But that's what happened. And the only thing I didn't know how to do was set the lifters. And there was a solid lifter cam in it, so you had to gap it. And I asked Uncle Chuck if he would help me. And he says, if you promise not to tell your dad, because he already told everybody, nobody helps him. So he showed me how to do the first 2. He says, rest of it's up to you. So I went ahead and did all of them, got it all running. I drove that thing until Dad started worrying about me killing myself in it. And it had a 6-volt system in it. And they had put 12-volt headlights in it. So if it started getting dark and I drove it, the lights would go dim and it would just stop running. I have to charge the battery up, which meant the only way you could charge up the battery was turn everything off, push it, get it started, and let it run until the battery, the 6-volt battery, would charge back up. So I knew I couldn't drive it at night. And there again, I learned a lot about electrical in the car too. Just knowing what was going to cause what, That was just kind of over the course of 2 years or something. Dad brought me a home a 53 Chevy that he had met some old lady in, supposedly old, probably a hell of a lot younger than I am right now. She had a 53 Chevy, didn't hardly have any miles on it. Ugliest four-door automatic you've ever seen. And he says, now I want you to get rid of that 32 Chevy. And so I was driving it. And Rich Clellan and I decided we were going to get it running, the 32, get it running and take it for a drive. Immediately blow up the engine right through the side of the block. And I went ahead and drove it home like that with a hole in the block. How I made it, I don't know. And parked it. And Gary Powell, who his brother was our Legion coach, Danny Powell, he wanted to buy a 32 Chevy. And he had a 31 Roadster with a 265 V8 in it. And he said, I'll trade you straight across for it. I said, well, the engine doesn't run in this. He said, I can't get the engine running in that either. So we switched cars. And I started trying to figure out what was wrong with the V8 that was in the little Roadster. And I pop up a valve cover, and he had all the lifters in upside down. So I went and switched all of them, and it was a hydraulic cam in it. I didn't know how to adjust those, but somebody, the neighbor, come over and saw me working on it. So what are you doing? I said, I'm trying to figure out how to set these lifters. He says, well, it's a hydraulic cam. You got to do it different. So he showed me how to do some of them. So once it started and I could do them all, then I went through and reset them all. And somebody else saw the car, and it was kind of cool, but I wasn't going to spend any money on it, you know. And somebody said, how much do you want for that car? And I said, well, I have to have $500. So I'll give you $4. I said, okay. So I bought my 32 Chevy for $75 and blew it up and ended up making a few $100s on it. And then the reverse went out into 32.
Hold up. Did you ever pay Aunt Jan back?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the transmission went out, the reverse went out into 32 or 53 Chevy, the 2-speed automatic. No reverse. I got so efficient at parking that thing. I always park on a hill, pull it up, let it roll, and let it back and go. I drove it like that for like 2 years. And I sold that to Ron Riggett. Because I had bought my 57 Chevy. And that happened because I was taking Lana Nemechek back to CSU. And we're driving through Loveland. I drive by this little car lot. They had about 7 cars out there. Here's this black 57 two-door hardtop sitting there. And I stop, and I look at it. On the way home, I dropped her off. She wanted to ride up there, and I knew some people going to school there, so I just went up. Coming back, I stop, and it said fuel injection on the side. I'd been thinking about it. I looked at the inside. It was like brand new. So I stopped in there. At that time now, I'm working at Gould. And I had some money, but not a lot. And he says, $795. $795? Yeah, and I said, man. So I go back and I'm sitting there and I start talking to Uncle Chuck. And I said, yeah, I found this car. I really like it, but it's $795. He said, well, how much money do you have? I said, I think I had $600 saved up. Well, I was going to, so I'll loan it to you. And you pay me back on so-and-so and so-and-so. So I go up and buy it. Thing run like crazy. And it was a 3-speed on the column. And I thought, this has got to go. That's not cool. Because the thing ran like crazy, but it was a 3-speed on the column. So I go down, I get a Hurst shifter, 3-speed on the floor. and the fuel injection started screwing up, and nobody knew how to work on it. So I get it down to Denver, and at that time it was a speed shop down there named Banamir's, small speed shop, and the guy knew what to do. So I'm trying to tell him, although my shifter knob says 4-speed, it's a 3-speed. You hear him, no, you got it, it's a 3-speed. Okay. So he does something, and it cost me like $70. Whatever he did, I don't know. Boy, that thing ran like crazy. I get back into Longmont, and Roger Torbeck come up beside me. He says, "You got a 4-speed in your car?" And I says, "No, I got a 3-speed." "You want a 4-speed?" I said, "Yeah, I'd love to have a 4-speed." He says, "Larry Idle's wife wants to sell the one out of her car." So where is she? I don't know, So he tells me where to find her. So I says, "So what do you want?" He says, "Well, I need $50 and you have to switch the transmission, so I have one too in my car." I said, "Okay." And there was a gas station at 10th and Main, and Bob Betts and all those guys used to go in there and hang out on the weekends. Well, I'd go get my gas there, and they'd call me in and talk to me about football game or baseball or basketball at the time, And I asked him, I said, "Can I use your rack? I got to switch transmissions." "Sure." So I used 2 racks, dropped the 3-speed out, the 4-speed out, flipped them over, got hers running, pulled it out, and give her $50, and she was on her way, and I got it done. Well, come to find out, she wanted $50 for something, but her husband didn't know that she was switching it out. And probably 2 months later, he was driving it and found out it wasn't a 4-speed. And they sent a guy to tell me that I have to return it. I go, "No way. I'm not returning it." And he says, "Well, Larry will come and talk to you about it." I said, "Well, he can do whatever he wants to do. He's not going to get that 4-speed." And he never did. But I learned how to change that too, because Rich and I tried to put a clutch in one time in his car. Put the clutch in backwards. Talk about wiping out a flywheel. Woo! Did that real quick. But we didn't know. Heck, that was the first time I ever tried to put a clutch in. I don't know what a clutch was doing. But then it just went from there. Then I ended up buying a Corvette. I sold that Corvette and bought the 67. And when I bought the 67, they said, "Well, it's not running now." And they'd taken it into Hayaks. And I said, "What do you mean it's not running? It doesn't run." Well, Ed Reardon's dad was the service manager. So I said, "Ed, we got to get your dad over to help us." And he listened to something. He goes, "Oh." He get in there and he starts goofing with the distributor. It was loose. And the guy that traded it in says, "I can't get it." So they brought it in with a flatbed. And he gets it, turn it over, and it goes, fires right up. And he goes, tightens it up, and he says, "We'll put a light on it later. You're going to have to use it like it is right now till next Monday." That was on Christmas Eve night. New Year's Eve day. So bring it back on Monday and we'll go ahead and set it back up for you. It's okay. So your mother and I went to Rich Clellan's house for a New Year's Eve party. And the last thing Louie told me was, "No, she is not drinking." Okay. Rich proceeds to go get her we got some really good juice in here or something, I don't know what. And he was putting vodka in it. Pretty soon she was just having a good old time. Well, we run out of beer. Well, let's go down and get some beer. And they lived right there by Sunset Golf Course on Sunset Circle. And Roger Torbeck family lived 2 blocks down. So I said, well, let's take the Corvette. So I get it out, I get on Sunset, and I goose it. And that thing, I lost that so fast, it was spun. I went backwards into Roger Torbeck's folks' place in the driveway. Never touched the thing. All you could see was black marks. I left, and I don't know how much longer after that I told Roger, I said, man, I tell you what, it scared me to death. I would squealing into your folks' front yards. I said, but stayed on the concrete. And he goes, and I almost got my car pulled away because they thought I did it in their driveway. I said, you never told me that. He said, well, we don't ever talk, because I didn't really know him that well. And then I started putzing with it. And then I got the wild hair. Let's change the camshaft. Let's do this with the heads. Because I was pretty familiar with that part of it. So I went ahead and went to the engine, and out off of now 119, but at the time it was 3rd Avenue, there was a dyno out there to the wheels. So I said, I'm really liking to see what this thing would do. And I took it out and put it on the dyno out there, and 605 horsepower at the wheels. Whew, yeah, it was fast. So I ended up having to buy great big tires, and then I was talking to a guy, Ron Weirma, and they had an Anglia that they used to race, a gasser. And he said, I got some wrinkle walls you can buy from me. I looked at him, I said, well, how old are they? He said, well, we've only run a few. They just weren't big enough for our car. Because he had an injected Anglia that really cranked. I said, okay. So I buy them from him. I go get a set of steel wheels. And then I go back to the regular tires, because I had wheels and tires all the way around on it. So I go get a regular set of steel wheels and put some small tires on it and take it out to the drag strip. And the first time I drive it down the strip with those, I bogged because I wasn't ready for those wrinkle walls to grab like that. So came back. This is on a Friday night grudge races then out at Erie. So I had told this guy that wanted to race me, and he had a Hemi and some kind of a Dodge. And I said, best 2 out of 3, because I've never even taken it out here. He said, okay. So I thought, well, I'm gonna try this differently. So I crank it up to 6,000 RPMs. The front end comes up, and it was gone. The first real time I ever got with it was a 10.5, and eventually I figured out, and I got it down into the 9s at that point. But I did most of that work myself too. Yeah, it was a scary car. That's the one your mother looped on Main Street. I mean, it was just like, if you had street tires, and I had wide street tires on it, you just burp it and it go poof. It was squirrely.
Would you say that that's your favorite car you've ever owned?
Yeah, that or my 57.
The blue one?
Yeah, well, it wasn't blue when I bought it.
You changed the color to that.
Yeah.
It was the black fuel injected one that you
Right.
were talking about.
Right. I sold that and bought my 65 Vet, that green one with the white scoop on it. Bought that from Dallas Snyder. And I couldn't get it to run worth a darn, and I kept playing with it and playing with it. It was a 365 horser. And I couldn't get it to run anywhere. And I started checking some things, and I said, I'm going to change the spark plug wires. Maybe that's doing it. I changed them, and all of a sudden it was like, whoa. So I started racing it first. Then I sold it and bought the 67. Then I bought a 69 after that, and I at Hayek, and it was a 435 horse 69 Vet, and it wouldn't even throw gravel. I don't know what was. It had such high gears. It had like 308s in it. It's just start talking to you in first gear about 70. I mean, who's going to drive at that speed, you know? So I was playing baseball at Erie, and Ray Martinez was our third baseman. And he goes, man, I like that car. So why don't you buy it from me? He said, what do you want for it? So I told him exactly how much I paid for it. And he goes, all right, I'll do that. So I went back into Hayek because they couldn't sell my 67 because kids would see it and they bring their dad in and they go for a test drive and their dad get out and go, no way, is it not happening? And so I went in and what they showed me when I bought it was so much many dollars, and I don't remember what that is. I offered them like $1,000 less, and they said, cheers. So I ended up making $1,000, and I had a new car for a while. But
Did you end up crashing that car?
wrecked it. Coming down from Allen's Park, come around the corner, and this, as I find out later, elderly lady driving up, and she had, I want to say Kansas license plates on, and she was right in the middle of a highway, scared to death driving up there. I come around the corner, and I was going way too fast to start with, and I went, whoa, I got a head on. So I kicked her to the right, and as soon as I get past her, I kicked it real hard and stomped on it. Well, it grabbed the pavement and went, boom. And when I wrecked it against the rocks across the road, it was up in the air high enough that when it hit, it knocked the radiator off and was laying on top of the engine. So and it put my teeth right through my mouth. I remember that. Gary Osborne's with me and it broke his nose. And we got it towed back down. I put it in my garage. I was living close on 7th or 9th Avenue. I was working at Google. I lived close. And I went down to Bradley's and they said they had a 66 in there.
Fine.
Hi there.
Got two final questions for you. First, what would you say was your biggest accomplishment, or what have you been most proud of in your life?
My 3 kids. Period. That's it.
And last question.
Although I'm still trying to figure out how you'd win a music award.
Not being musical at all.
Yes.
So maybe that's what makes it so good, you know.
Yeah, really.
What life advice do you have for all your grandkids or your kids?
I guess don't do what I did. I don't know. I just remember something, and I told you this, and I told all 3 of you kids, that I still think, and someplace I used to have a plaque that said it, that if somebody was to sit down and define pride, the best thing I've ever heard was justifiable self-respect is pride as a meaning. Because if you think about it, if you feel that you've done the most you can do and as good as you can do it, you should have pride in it. You know, so. But it's got to be justifiable. That's pretty much it.
It's good, Dad.
In fact, I made that plaque that time, and I don't know whatever happened to it. Are you sleeping, Rosie?
Lost in one of the moves, huh?
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add or talk about?
No. We've just been gabbing.
We've just been gabbing, but it was good. It was exactly what I was hoping for.
Yeah.
I think everyone will enjoy seeing that someday.
Yeah.
Not today, and not in the next year.
Right.
A little bit down the road, okay?
Yeah. After we go to Vegas and stuff.
Yeah. Let's do all that stuff first. All right, Dad. Thanks for doing that.
Sure.
I'm gonna go chop up some stuff. They should be here.
Turn on your radio so we can listen to the Rocky game.
Absolutely.